So I'm following in my late father's footsteps here today. I have here a 2004 Chevy Avalanche. And of course with these Avalanches, they have frame problems. So a little bit of welding here today. And at some point, I'll have to do the same to my late father's truck, which sits over there. I might end up doing a frame swap to his. Not sure yet. I can't really recall how bad his was, but anyway. Got a Chevy Avalanche here. Typical, you know, same like any other Suburban. Service 4-wheel drive. Pretty standard message that'll come up on the, what they call the DIC, Driver Information Center, I'm assuming. So this would light up on the initial startup. All the lights would light up and then the whole unit would go blank. So these switches normally don't go. I've had one go where actually you'll be in too high and all of a sudden you're driving down the highway and it'll shift into 4 high, just out of the blue. There was even one point when the switch was getting to be to the point of, you know, really severe. It would try and go into 4 low, but at least when you're driving in gear, it would prevent it from doing that. So the light would sit there and flash. And it would kind of catch you off guard. You're looking over and it's like, why in the hell is the truck trying to switch into 4 low? Anyway, that's happened to me once. So sometimes they do fail, sometimes they don't. We've got a couple ground wires under here. You know, lots of oil undercoating, a little bit of rust, you know, and whatnot. I believe one of these goes to the transfer case and one goes to the front axle. There's that frame mess that I gotta fix. No big deal. I've dealt with worse. So anyhow, I'm gonna take my little grinder here. It's got a little bit of a sanding pad on here. What do they even call this? I can show you guys what I'm working with here. Used a wire brush for the initial, you know, scaling portion. Made by Walter. Eco trim. Anyway, it's just basically a little sanding pad. So I have that on my angle grinder. All right, it turns out that other grinder was NFG, so I had to go and grab another one out of the shop. So something like that. We'll do a little more touch-ups here. Scrape off this undercoating. Just gumming up the sanding wheel. And then I'll touch up the terminals too. They seem to be in good shape from what I can see here. They're a little corroded, but I mean, a little bit of cleanup on those. They'll be all right. Shove those on top of that body mount for now so that they don't get in the way of the angle grinder. Alright, I gave them a little quick going over with just the wire brush. Not too bad. I might try and touch them up a little better. Anyway, the frame looks good. So I'll probably, once I'm done with all this, I'll just spray some fluid film around it. I'm going to get the truck oiled at some point as well and paint the underside of it after I'm done welding, just to try and prolong it. It'll be a nice little winter cruiser anyway. I just want to show you for posterity purposes what this will do if there is poor ground down below on the frame. See, all the lights light up. Okay, actually we must be getting to chassis ground right now, believe it or not. I must have the wires touching. But anyway, so what was happening is that during the initial startup, so all the dash lights come on, for example, you'd get all the lights to flash, you know, do their cycle to let you know the system is working fine, like so. And then the whole panel would go blank. So there'd be nothing displayed here whatsoever. You could push all the buttons all you wanted, nothing would be displayed. Down below here, it would say service 4-wheel drive. Clearly it's not saying that right now. I must have a wire touching or something that, maybe not. Huh. Anyway, so we'll try and see what we can do. It actually probably won't do anything because there is no ground. No, it'll just go back to 2-wheel drive. You might encounter this as well. Poor chassis ground, you might end up having display lit up, whereas I did not. Anyhow, so just for posterity purposes, I just wanted to show you guys that. So I'm going to clean up those terminals a little bit better. I'm going to clean them all up, and then I'm going to throw these back on. The big one went there, and then this one also went here, and this one went over here. Alright, so what I've done here is there's a couple of washers that were just lying on top. I took them off and gave them a quick going over as well. Just kind of clean up all the rust and undercoating or whatever else is there, corrosion. So they're all cleaned up. I didn't bother with the head of the bolt. That's all right. So as long as it's going to make good contact with the terminals and the chassis, we'll have a good ground. $13mm for these as well. I forgot to mention that earlier. I usually get it. I don't want to overdo it. Spray some undercoating under that after. I won't have to worry about rust. Now, if your four-wheel drive still doesn't engage, or you still get the service four-wheel drive message, you're probably going to be looking for actuator motor. You know, there could be a bad wire inside the harness leading to the transfer case or to the front axle, so you might have to be mindful of all that as well if you still get that message. I can hear action. There we go. There's my four-wheel drive. Let's try four low. I got no four low. There might be an issue with the transfer case or the actuator. Or I'm in drive. And there's four low. Four high. And two-wheel drive. And auto. My father always used auto four-wheel drive in the winter. I personally found that everything that was engaged, if you had it in auto four-wheel drive, kind of contributed to worse fuel economy. So anyway, that be that. We now have four-wheel drive working. So it's something to be mindful about if you still get a service four-wheel drive message, or your transfer case just refuses to go into any, you know, four high or anything of that nature. You might have to, you know, trace some wiring all the way back to your transfer case and dig deeper, of course. But usually you'll get away with this, you know, especially with the tire being right there. All that crap and sediment will come flying up here and you know, sit and fester around this area, and then you'll get a poor chassis ground, and you won't have your four-wheel drive. So, you know, 9 times out of 10, you know, if you clean all that up, you'll get it. I've had this over the years with certain trucks that you clean it up and then you still don't get any satisfaction with four-wheel drive. It's still, you still don't have it. So sometimes you get away lucky with it, sometimes you won't. So, but it doesn't hurt to take 20 minutes. Like this whole, you know, this whole ordeal took me 20 minutes. I just took all these bolts out and, you know, cleaned them up with the grinder, you know, something like this, and clean the bolts with the bench grinder, you know. And it's, you know, a 20-minute job. I mean, you know, something you can try and do on a Saturday, right? And sometimes you'll get away lucky, and sometimes you won't. But you know, it's just one of the first things you could try, rather than, you know, getting out your probe and your tools and all that and trying to figure out, well, is it anything up there or is it anything back here? Well, it could just simply be this. So something to look into before you get too antsy and start ordering parts that you don't really need. So probably would help if there was splash guards on this truck, but a lot of people, you know, don't really clean out the undercarriage of the vehicle during, you know, in the springtime after, you know, a heavy, you know, salt infested winter season. So, you know, you get a lot of corrosion and salt and stuff spraying up there and mud and whatever else, so then you have a bad chassis ground. And if anybody wants, and I just detailed this truck too, I don't want to get in here, but anybody who hasn't been, isn't familiar with this kind of stuff, here's another switch as well. There is RPO codes. I believe NP6 is what this one is. So if you do have to order a four-wheel drive switch from, like, say, Rock Auto or something, you're going to want to look at your RPO codes. And, you know, or even when you call your auto parts supplier. So I'm just going to shift into gear. I'm going to grasp this and just give it a yank. I'm sure a lot of people, Chevy guys, already know all about this. You know, some people don't. But you just grasp this. If you have tilt steering, set it all the way down, like so. And I'm going to have to disconnect this. But when you're disconnecting these, there's just 2 little pins here that hold them. You can probably get them with your fingernail. And then also this here is just held in place by clips as well. I'll show you that in a second. All right. Tilt this over top of the gauge cluster, the front dash, and we'll just set this aside. Sometimes your four-ways will come on. So anyway, it just sits in there like this, so you can tell that there's a top clip there. You know, a thin blade screwdriver just kind of, you know, press up on the tang, and then on the side as well, it'll pop right out. There's no screws or any other hardware holding this in there. So, something also to be mindful about, I know a lot of people will go in and run and grab a switch at their auto parts stores or their auto wreckers or whatever, and thinking that, you know, that's the problem. Well, before you get too ahead of yourself and start spending money that you don't need to spend money on, you know, just take a look at your chassis grounds first. And we're just going to slide this unit back on over top, over the gear shifter, with the dash. Make sure all the pins are lined up properly. There's little tabs in there. See, there's one right there. There's a hole there. A hole there. Once you get one lined up, you're pretty well good. And then just line up the ones over here. Even pushes all the way around until everything is nice and flush. If anything's sticking out, well then you know you have your pins in the right spot. Put it in tranny and back in park. We'll set the gear. Tilt steering in the right position again. And start our beautiful, well-maintained LS engine. There's 4 high. Clunk. There's 4 low. And there's 2 high. And there you have it. So a quick little easy 20-minute repair that took absolutely nothing except time. I'd say we did pretty well. There's a quick little way to service your 4-wheel drive without having to throw money and parts at it that you don't need. Have a good weekend, everybody.